Welcome back to CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. We are still with Jim Jordan, who has given us a lot of time, which is kind of ironic because, like, you have so many important issues that you're right in the middle of, and one of them is this terrible problem in this country called Dr. Anthony Fauci. And we have a tweet that you put up this week, which is great. If Fauci had any sense of honor left, he'd resign today. Now, I'd like to ask you what particular Fauci controversy you were referring to.
Well, I was referring to all of them. Remember, for 22 months now, he's told us that it didn't come from a lab. I think we touched on this earlier.
Yeah.
And then last week we learned that they in fact were doing gain-of-function research at the lab in Wuhan, China, with American tax dollars. That entity that received that grant money, our tax money, didn't comply with the grant, didn't report that fact as they were required to under the proposal, didn't do so for 22 months. And during that time, they got $21 million of American tax money, continued to receive that additional money. And then, of course, we find out, in addition to all that your tax dollars, our tax dollars, are going to fund research that's torturing animals, torturing puppies. So all that together, why is this guy the highest paid official in our government? Why does he still have a job in light of how he has handled things for the last 2 years?
Let me just say one other thing on this. I saw his response to Rand Paul, and give Rand Paul a lot of kudos for what he's done here. He's really stepped up. But I remember listening to Dr. Fauci say, well, all we do is give them the money. We can't really control the grant. Anybody who's involved has had any federal job.
Yep.
Knows that is an outrageous statement to make. He knows that's a lie, or it's definitely untrue, which is every grant has a governing structure around it. And you can't just give $21 million to the Wuhan lab and say, oh, I hope you do the right things with it.
Well, when you give the money and they don't follow the directions and the protocols in that grant proposal, and they're doing gain-of-function research, and they continue to receive $21 million of taxpayer money, that's probably a problem, for goodness sake. So
and it's his job as the person giving the money to make sure that it's complying with the law. He is actually in violation of the law with his testimony saying it wasn't my job to make sure the 21 million didn't go to create a virus to kill a bunch of people.
Yeah, and the bottom line is he can't have it both ways. He can't be the guy who is the all-knowing Reverend Fauci, the smartest man on the planet, on one hand, and the other time like, oh, I don't know, I just give the money and it's up to them. Like, dude, you can't be both ways. So that's the problem, and that's what so many Americans see and frankly are frustrated with.
I really have a major problem with Dr. Fauci. You two obviously do already because of back and forth.
Dr. Fauci's bad for my health because it makes my blood pressure go. I think what he's actually done is made the nation sicker because he's trying to scare the hell out of everybody.
It's the fear factor. It's the wear a mask, wear 2 masks, wear 3 masks. And he does it with such cockiness. Like he really goes in there trying to be the scientist, but then he changes his opinion every 5 minutes. And he wants to make his opinion like the law, basically saying we have to follow these guidelines or else. And what I think would have worked is stop blaming the unvaccinated people. It really bothers me. It's like Americans should have a choice to have that be a private matter, whether they make a decision to tell their employee, not to tell their employee or employer. I just find it so awful how both Joe Biden and Fauci have really spent a lot of time blaming the unvaccinated Americans. It's just not right.
No, it's freedom, right? It's the word we most associate with this great country. It's freedom, and Americans should have the freedom to decide that decision, make that decision, and to have these guys do what they did. I would love to have Dr. Fauci on the witness stand again. The 2 times that we did in the Select Committee on Coronavirus, I asked him one time asked him one simple question: does protesting? This is during the summer 20. Does protesting increase the spread of the virus? He wouldn't answer the question, because the Democrats had this, that it's always the double standard with them. And then the second time he came, ask him a simple question: when does it end? Give me the measurement, give me the metric, give me the standard, give me what we have to reach, what level, what goal we have to reach. Tell me what it is before we get our freedom back. And he wouldn't answer that question because he likes the power and likes this idea of government controlling us and telling us what to do.
And he does say that. He does basically say you're going to have to give up your own freedoms for society. That is Marxist.
Total straight out of Marx. Yeah, give up your freedom for the greater good. And I where was he been reading Marx recently? I mean, that is so wrong. That is not how this great country functions.
Yeah, for sure. We could talk about Fauci. The only thing ad nauseum, the only thing I would say as the parent of young kids who are in the DC sphere, when they change these policies,
it's tough.
it really affects kids. It affects parents. Do you think that the government has the right to ask you, number one, whether you've had corona or not, and whether or not you're vaccinated?
Of course not.
Shouldn't you be able to govern your own healthcare?
Yeah, I mean, it's fundamental. it's basic to freedom and who we are as citizens of this great country. But that's not where the left is. The left is, we're smarter than you. We're going to tell you what to do. You disagree with us. You're racist. You're terrible. They're going to call you names, and they're going to continue to do this. But as we've talked about earlier, I don't think the American people are going to tolerate it. They're pushing back.
Let me ask you, Jim, because I've read just some of the legal cases. So, the private employers seem to have more power to put these forced mandates in place. And then it seems like the government doesn't really, they have more constitutional restrictions. Is that what you're saying? I mean, where does this end up?
But it's all going to get litigated. But I will tell you, the other thing that's happening is there's the fundamental issue about liberty. But then there's also the practical economic impact. Right now, I have not met one employer in our district or across the country, because I travel a lot, not one single employer who hasn't come up to me and said, I can't find enough people to work. And my attitude is, well, when you pay people not to work, you shouldn't be surprised when you can't find workers. It doesn't take a genius to figure this out. So there's that practical. We got a supply chain problem. I was in California 2 weekends ago. They got ships lined up. I saw them. This is a problem. Yeah. So there's that economic thing. You start telling people you're not going to. We're already seeing in Chicago when police aren't going to show up. They already defunded the police. Now they're going to tell them you can't work because you don't have the vaccine.
Yeah.
You wait till families start thinking wow, this is not going to fly. So there's that practical economic impact as well that's going to help us as we move forward.
I keep going to the source that you really get the right scoop on, and that's the Babylon Bee. And they have assured us that inflation is not a problem because there's nothing to buy anyway.
Yeah. I saw that too.
I even told this when we saw President Trump recently. I was explaining to him, when you fly regularly, as you do, and you go to an airport, it's weird. It's eerie to see a lot of empty shelves, to see that you can only pay by credit card because there's one employee. How fragile is this economy?
Yeah. I mean, this administration has done everything wrong. There's not one good thing you can point to in the 10 months. And the thing that I think concerns so many Americans...
I would disagree with one thing. He was right when he said, when Joe Biden said he would not be constitutionally permissible to have these mandates. He actually said that, if you remember.
He did. But, I mean, we went from a secure border to chaos, energy independence, to the president begging OPEC to increase production. We went from stable pricing to record inflation. We went from relatively safe cities to crime. So they've got everything wrong. I mean, let's hope something turns around, because it is just not good for the country.
To me, Afghanistan, that decision was so catastrophic. I think about these Afghan women and children. I think about the brutality that's happening now with the Taliban. I mean, we've talked to our girls so much about how these girls once were hopeful for their future. Now, their lives have forever changed. I mean, talk about the incompetence, the mental unfitness of this president.
Well, you look at the debacle that was the exit from Afghanistan. It just, again, one more example of everything they've done wrong. We think about we went from peace in the Middle East, the Abraham Accords, embassy in Jerusalem, to thousands of rockets being fired on our best friend and ally, the state of Israel, and then what happened in Afghanistan in a few months. Yeah. And it's that's the part that makes Americans think, wow, maybe this is a little more, I think you used the word, Matt, earlier, fragile, because it happened so rapidly. It's went downhill in just a 10-month time frame.
I think
that's what's scary.
This is what's scary, and I think all of our viewers understand this, which is, I'd say the number one thing in the country, you said people are afraid of their government, but I also think people are sad because they can't believe how much we've lost so fast. Think about the war on gender, sexualizing our kids, sending messages overseas that America doesn't stand with her allies. Yeah. I mean, it's really, and then it comes to the economy. That's always the central focus of everything in America, right? Because it can help people's lives. And
this brings me to a great tweet, and then we got to talk about his book. Okay,
great book.
Schlapp, we got to talk about the book. So,
by the way, I do feel like I'm looking at you I'm sorry, I don't know where to put my head. It's a big head, but I've got to get it in the right direction.
Okay. The Jim Jordan tweet: George Washington didn't lower expectations in 1776. The Wright brothers didn't lower expectations at Kitty Hawk. The 1980 USA Olympic hockey team didn't lower expectations against the Russians. Democrats want you to settle for less, but Americans don't accept mediocrity.
Yeah, I mean, that's where socialism always takes you, to averageness, to mediocrity, and many times to something even worse. That's not America. We're a country that sets high goals, big dreams, and in this country, when you have freedom, you can go make them happen. If you get a chance, read McCullough's book on the Wright brothers. Amazing book. These guys didn't take a penny. And the guys they were competing against, they decided, we're going to be the goal. We're going to be the first motorized flight, take off, fly, land. We're going to do it first. And they did it without a penny of help from the government. It's a fascinating book, just old-fashioned American perseverance. The book starts off with a great line. He said, someone once asked Wilbur Wright what it takes to be successful. And he said, pick out two good parents and be born in Ohio. And it's a great line.
That's sweet.
But it could have been, pick out two good parents and be born in Kansas. Pick out two good parents and be born in America. Where you can have a goal, have a dream, and make it happen.
I agree.
That's the American dream, and the left is going to destroy it if they win. That's what this is ultimately about.
It is.
And I think, again, more and more Americans are figuring that out and understand it, because Americans are smart people with common sense, and they're going to push back and make sure we continue to be a place where the 80 hockey team can do what they did, where Washington, those guys can do it, where the Wright brothers can do what they did.
Well, you talked about the Wright brothers book, but you have a book that's just come out. Do what you said you would do. So first of all, where can people get this book?
They can go right now to Barnes & Noble or Amazon and pre-order it. We're doing well in the pre-orders. We're very pleased.
Good.
But, it always helps when great people like you hold the book up. But it's
what inspired you to write it?
It's about the Freedom Caucus a lot, and it's about President Trump. And frankly, let's be honest. No president, certainly in our lifetime, probably in the history of this country, has done more of what they said they would do than President Trump. I mean, and against all odds. This whole town was against him. You guys know.
Right.
You know what this town's like. Every Democrat against him, everyone in the mainstream press, everyone in the bureaucracy. The swamp was against him, not to mention some Republicans. And he got more. So we talk about a lot of the behind-the-scenes interactions with the president, and we get into all the investigations, particularly impeachment, but also we go back to Benghazi, the IRS targeting scandal a few years ago when the IRS went after folks like you guys and your supporters. So I think your viewers, it'll be a fun read for them.
Okay, so as people get the book, and CPAC's going to make sure that we promote it as much as we possibly can.
Thank you.
What do you think the president's going to do in 2024?
Oh, he's running.
You say it's 100%.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't officially announced it, but I would bet our house, and Polly's even here to support that. I would bet our house and home that he's running, and we need him because he's proven he can take the heat.
Right.
I had a conversation with him one time. This is back during the whole Mueller thing. And he called me, and I stepped in this room in the Capitol. I was pacing around. We were talking. You guys have had similar, I'm sure, conversations. And at one point in the conversation, I said, Mr. President, I know what I get. I know how CNN lies about me and MSNBC and the New York Times and all this stuff they say. And I said, I know what I get, but you get it 1,000 times worse.
Oh, yeah.
And you get it every second of every day.
And his kids.
Yes. And he goes, there's a little pause, and he goes, well, Jim, what are you going to do? Go over in the corner, get in the fetal position, start sucking your thumb? He goes, we got to fight back. And I'm like, I'm with you. Let's keep fighting. And that's the right attitude. With a smile on your face like we have right now.
Yeah.
Because it's America. We might as well fight with a smile on our face. It's the best thing going.
Well, you know, Congressman, I often say if we're not smiling, we might be crying. So you might as well smile.
Exactly.
You might as well enjoy it. And I think that's one of the things that the way you provide inspiration to people, which is they see you getting in there, you're intense, and you're tough, but you're not mean, and you're not over the line.
I hope so.
And I think that's the balance, right? Which is we love the country, and we're going to save this country, and we're going to save it by convincing people in the middle that we're on the right side.
Well said. Well said. And you guys have been doing it, and we appreciate what you do and the difference you make for the things that really matter in America.
Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, it is a behind the scenes, and I really do wish that people could see the President Trump
true.
behind the scenes, because he is just, first of all, he's hilarious.
Totally.
And secondly, he truly is focused on doing the right thing.
Yeah.
In every single policy issue, and he's always asking for opinions, which politicians, for the most part, don't do.
Yeah. No, it's so funny to say, because I say that in so many speeches. I wish every American could meet him. Because when you're around him, you cannot help but like him.
Cannot help but like him.
It is.
And I wish we'd all be inspired by the topic of your book, Do What You Said You Would Do, because that is what that was the strategy he decided to employ in becoming our president. We all thought, well, maybe he'll be moderate. And
he had a whiteboard in the West Wing where they would check off every promise he made.
Yes.
And this thing was covered.
Yeah.
We know the big issues, the wall, the Iran deal. But once he got in there and you saw him just for a little bit, you're like, he's the right guy at the right time and exactly what this country needs.
All right, one more political question. We have these all-important midterm elections next year. We get back the House majority. What's your role?
I want to be chair, Lord willing, chair of the Judiciary Committee. Historically, that's been the committee that has focused on protecting the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, your liberties. And in light of what we've seen in the last couple of years, I think that's important. Plus, it's also the committee where you can do investigations. I mean, you think about this. There have been thousands of Americans whose tax returns were made public. In America, and not to mention the Hunter Biden issue, not to mention what all the things that happened with Fauci and his misleading us about gain of function, misleading us about where this virus started. I think there's lots of things we need to look into and get the American people the truth. So I look forward to that.
So a lot of people would like to see you run for leadership. That's not the course you want to be on. You want to be on this all-important committee to stop the shenanigans of the federal government.
Yeah, there's a storied history of the House Judiciary Committee defending Americans' liberties. And that's what we got to get back to. And I'd like the opportunity to help lead that effort.
Well, that's where we need you. So let's make it happen. And it's going to take all of you to get involved. Make sure you're becoming poll watchers. Making sure you're getting involved in these races because the midterm elections are really going to matter. But you first got to do what you said you would do. I don't know if I can translate that into Spanish.
I was going to ask you, how do you say that in Spanish?
It might take me. Haz lo que te dicen que debes hacer.
So when you do your book on tape, she'll do the Spanish version.
Yes,
okay?
that's right.
Yeah.
That's
signing
right.
up.
That was actually very good.
Jim Jordan, it's very kind of you to give us so much of your time in the midst of all of these controversies. Please keep doing what you're doing. I know that it's discouraging to be up there. But I think the American people are watching you.
Thank you.
And you're making a big difference. So thank you.
You guys are making a huge difference and have done so for a while. Thank you.
Well, we're having fun in the process. And thank you all for joining us. Good night and God bless.
Many of these school board members are very much part of this indoctrination, this leftist agenda, very political. What's going to be your stance? What's your message in terms of when you talk to voters?
So it's about having informed consent. Our parents are the primary stakeholders for the children and representing and ensuring that their views are being represented in the schools. So I'm for parents, I'm for informed consent. They need to be a part of the discussion. We can't eliminate them from the discussion.